Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for this special edition of the Cheyenne Hills Podcast. Sometimes when doing the program, we discover information of timely importance to our community. These special episodes are meant to get that information to you sooner. Now here's Pastor Galen and Nathan Winters.
Across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello again, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And we have some, breaking news. I've never used that word before. It's breaking news for me, as you were talking to me about some of the new things. And Nathan, kind of as the watchman on the wall for our Cheyenne and Cheyenne schools and parents, you've got some information that all parents need to set up and take a listen to.
Well, let's step back for just a second and say there is a lot of confusion right now that is coming through in the current generation. When I say the current generation, the ones that are in school right now, who are being bombarded, like just last week, Lego putting out a whole new series of toys that are based upon a gender spectrum and so on. Things that are clearly opposite biology, things that are clearly opposite science.
Right.
And so you look at what is coming, and that's part of the other reason I think for so much confusion and eventually despair and fear, what we've just talked about.
Right.
So let me go back just a bit and talk about something that's happening right here in Cheyenne.
Right.
Several waves of ideology, as you know, have swept across the nation, and some of it's critical theory, which started off as a legal term, became known as critical race theory in the 1990s. There's also this whole idea regarding the history of America and many other things. Really what it is it's a new iteration of Marxism that tries to separate people from one another and assign people into various identities, and your value is based upon your identity. That is a terrible notion that is being taught today.
So some are oppressors and some are the oppressed. That's
exactly.
Those are the two big groups. There's a lot of other groups that are
right.
identified as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead of it being the rich versus the poor or the proletariat versus the bourgeois, as it was in the past, now they're subdividing according to gender and race and all those other things. The things that America actually fought to eliminate during the Cold War.
That's true.
And so we're in that ideology today. And parents are learning to actually speak up against a lot of this. And we've begun to watch a movement across America as people are realizing that modern Marxism is being taught to their children. Right. And they're standing up and pushing back. One of the challenges is whenever you push back in that way, which is a wonderful thing to do, it doesn't mean that the problem ends. What happens is they turn around and begin to try to push this then upon teachers. And enforce this in a way where parents may not have as much say, because now you're buried into the system, into the education system far more deeply, and it's harder to root out.
So we're going to put all the focus on the teachers
and
let them do all of this gender sensitivity. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Or at least hold them to standards. And in this case, you have more ability to threaten them with their job.
With their job. If they don't fall in line with these new whatever policies might be out there.
And imagine that. If you lose your job because of some new statement made by a diversity coordinator, and then you want to go get a job at another school district.
And you can't.
You've got to spend all that time, especially as you're submitting your application, you have to spend all of that time trying to make sure people know I was fired because of a political ideology, not because of anything I actually did wrong.
Right.
But the problem that we're facing now is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's a new policy that potentially can come through the school district unless we have people that will speak against it. And it's the idea that if you don't, this is the potentiality, that if you don't talk to people and use their preferred pronoun, which of course can change back and forth.
I know that. I was going to ask you about that.
Right.
One of the things that I've discovered in this whole pronoun issue is that the kids can identify as a boy could identify as a boy, or maybe a girl as we or as they, and which I don't understand all that.
Right.
But it's like, but they can identify differently all the time. It's like, well, today I want to be identified as we. Is that correct? Is that a
well? I think that
terminology?
is the reason why they use the we and they.
Because they could be both that
and
day,
or both and right,
just whatever
exactly.
they're feeling that day. And so this diversity is basically saying, okay, whatever this child wants to be identified, you have to identify him that way, and if you don't, possible consequences?
Right.
Is that what, was
well,
that what we're talking
they could
about?
consider that hate speech.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, they could say that you are not being inclusive.
Yep.
And so in this particular case, this is the problem with the policy that's being proposed, is there will be a new small group of people headed by a diversity coordinator, one of the individuals that presumably would be the person that will have developed out these new policies, and a person that has been trained by leftist ideology. That's the thing that, because there are good people that sometimes, I think nice people, that will take a particular path in their education and become a diversity coordinator. Nice people. But the problem is the ideology that they have been trained in is one that actually battles the concept of freedom, first and foremost, and secondly is one that has been weaponized to use to train children in a new ideology that is, at the end of the day, rooted in Marxism.
Right.
One of the things America is proud of is the fact that we have been a diverse nation.
Is that our strength? It's why we have great restaurants. That's why we have great people.
Right.
We have all this diversity in our, and now, because I don't know, that's been a strength, and now it's become a weakness because we're having to pick sides and choose, and that's what Marxism does. It divides.
Yeah.
It says, okay, you against you, you against you, and now this in particular is Marxist in the sense that it's saying, okay, it's pitting basically the children against the teachers against the diversity coordinator.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of groups here that are being pitted and against one another. So how does this going to work? Is this I guess there's two questions. How can this actually happen? And then how can we say our piece and say, please, no? Right.
Well, we need to, first of all, encourage our school board to not adopt this new policy.
Okay.
That's going to be important.
Okay.
And the current policy, if the current policy continued on without these new changes, I think that Cheyenne would be just fine. But part of the training that has already occurred here, I have a picture of a couple slides from a training that was given last year to Laramie County School District number 1 employees. And one of the things they talk about regarding examples of microaggressions is the theme is, let me just give you a couple. One of them, the theme is an alien in their own land. So when someone says, hey, you speak really good English, the microaggression is, hey, you're not American. Well, what if that cannot be universally? But there's a point there. Here we go.
So no, wait. Would something like that come to a diversity person in the school and say, "Hey, this person is not
claiming that they're claiming microaggressions, that you're throwing microaggressions at them."
Okay.
By the way, this whole concept of microaggression, which is a moving target anyway.
So is that a minor hate speech crime? Is that what the microaggression is? Is that what you mean?
Well,
by that?
I don't know for sure, but one could clearly see that this is what these are the ideas that they're pushing.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Ascription of intelligence. If you were to tell someone you are so articulate, I would consider that to be a compliment. If someone were to tell that to me, or I were to share that with someone else, you're very articulate. What they're saying is that's a microaggression that means it's unusual for someone of your race to be intelligent.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense either.
Well, that's so subjective. I mean, who's going to be able to? You're going to bring this complaint to a sensitivity or a trainer or whatever, and they're going to make a determination. It's like, okay, you said this kind of microaggression,
right?
Therefore, there's this punishment. Is that what's going to be? Does that person have that kind of power?
One has to be very thoughtful of where this could go over the next 2 decades.
Well, now these are things I had never thought of, but the ones that I did think of is that, a biological boy wants to be identified as a girl, and the teacher doesn't refer to that biological boy as she that particular day or whatever.
Right.
That's a violation, right? That's going to go before the board. Is that right?
Yeah. It is.
And they're going to make a call, and it's like, okay, you called me she once, okay,
and I'm
slap
sure
your
there'll
wrist.
be a whole spectrum, how many times you've done it, or if it's been...
Or you just refuse to comply. Okay.
The better thing is to not hold people to a standard that's arbitrary.
Right.
And so here's another one where critical race theory comes right in, and this is from a slide that happened last year in Laramie County School District number 1, and it's under the theme, Denial of Individual Racism. The microaggression is this. If you say, well, my best friend is black, they're saying what you're really saying is, I'm immune because I have friends of color. Immune to what? That's a good question. Gotcha. Here's another one. As a woman, if you were a lady, as a woman, I know what you're going through. And then what they're saying, that's a microaggression because you're saying that your racial oppression is not different than my gender oppression. But again, it's subdividing all these things out. And when you look at what that means, they would actually say that you and I right now are exhibiting something called white fragility.
Okay.
Saying that this is wrong is them saying that our white fragility is speaking.
Wow.
But that doesn't even make sense either, because when you think about it, we're actually saying there's a standard of truth that we agree to and that previous generations, regardless of color, agreed to, that we really have to treat and desire to treat one another with love and respect, not separating people out into different constituent groups and then pitting them against one another.
Well, and that's the ultimate. And that's the one thing that I was trying to grasp as you were talking about this. We were kind of visiting about it. Yeah. There all these different groups. It's not just the oppressed and the oppressor and the oppressed. I mean, anybody can see. It's like those are really clear. These are really hard to. Call them microaggressions because it's like, well, almost anything we do, even our existence, can even show a white, whatever you just said,
white fragility,
and that's wow. This is a world that I hope we have enough people to say we don't want to live or expose our kids to that world.
Well, let's contrast that vision, that actually quite hateful vision of the future, with what the Christian vision is, a genuine Christian vision, and that is where we genuinely love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, by the love you have one for another. Right. And it's not based upon color. It's not based upon wealth. It's not based upon your sex. It's based genuinely upon your relationship with one another in Christ. Right. And a genuine desire to see one another thrive in their walk in life. Right. That is the actual beautiful vision that we're talking about here. If we lived by biblical principles, I really do know that the world would be a better place.
No question. Yeah. So our challenge is to do a better job of living by those biblical principles.
That's right.
And loving one another, no question about that. And I don't think it means that we have to agree on everything. Right. I mean, I can love people of other faiths, other religions, other everything. Doesn't mean I necessarily agree with those views. Right. But it's like I still love that person because they're a human being.
Exactly.
And that's a whole different thing. It's like they're almost, if we don't have perfect agreement and harmony on every even nuance, is what is being picked up. Okay, so this is is this called something? Is it called a? Well, when it comes before the school board, what's this called?
It's going to come up at the next school board meeting. People need to actually speak on this by Friday.
By this Friday.
By this Friday.
Wow.
And just write to the school board and email them and say, listen, I am very concerned about, for instance, the due process rights for a teacher.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things,
we're gonna lose some good teachers.
Yeah, exactly. And people that are actually really good and love kids, and but are being accused of something that is a new standard that's really not good at all. And so just by pointing out that the way harassment and discrimination charges are handled, we still have to consider genuine justice, due process, and the constitutional rights of teachers. Yeah.
How can they be involved? By this Friday, they need to do what?
Yeah.
How can they do
I'm
this?
going to send out an email that will give you the ability to go right to that board, and where you can email. There'll even be a little bit of language where you can email the board and email individual people on that board and say, please don't pass this policy. Yeah. And here are the several reasons why about 4 reasons why.
Okay. And so is it also going to be on your website?
Yes.
Policy Alliance?
Yes.
Give us
It'll
that
be on
one.
the website, and if that's something that can't happen fast enough, I'm going to get it to you. I'm going to just try to get it out to as many people as I know. I want this to go as quickly as possible.
So if it comes to my email, then I mean, I want to be able to everybody to be able to tap into
Yes.
this. So if they can go to familypolicyalliance.com, and then it's another pathway for them to
That's
fill
right.
out just like they did last time.
That's right.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Well, we need to land this plane,
Yes.
but and we've got a lot more to talk about. But thank you for being. That's the watchdog. That's the watchman on the wall, watching for us all. Thank you, Nathan, very much. Well, God bless you. And as I say every time, we've got to be strong and very courageous. God bless you all. Thanks.